This is a national emergency. Effective immediately. Cover all windows. Do not look outside. If you hear voices urging you to check, ignore them. If you see movement in the glass, it is not real. Stay away from reflections. The emergency alert blared across every device at once. Phones, TVs, radios, all buzzing with the same monotone voice. Attention! This is a national broadcast. Effective immediately. Cover all windows. Do not look outside. Stay indoors until further notice. At first, people thought it was a hoax, some viral stunt, until the warnings repeated again and again. Each time, the tone grew sharper, more urgent. Finally, the message ended with a chilling command. If you see movement in the glass, do not respond. I stood frozen in my living room, staring at my own reflection in the large window. The street outside looked normal, silent, empty. But my reflection didn't move when I raised my hand. It only smiled. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. The glass shimmered faintly, like heat waves rising from asphalt. Behind my reflection, something shifted. Something tall. The figure pressed closer to the window, but the street beyond remained completely still. Another alert buzzed from my phone. This is not a drill. Stay away from all reflective surfaces. Do not engage with visual anomalies. Cover mirrors, windows, and screens immediately. The voice shook slightly now, like even the announcer was afraid. I tore the curtains down from the rod and shoved them against the glass. My reflection disappeared. The room sank into shadow. But in the silence that followed, I heard faint tapping against the window, like fingernails on glass. The sound stopped only when I pressed my palms over my ears. My phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't an alert. It was a text message. From my own number. Why did you cover me? I dropped the phone instantly. It landed face up on the floor, and the reflection in the black screen didn't match my expression. It blinked slowly, deliberately. I smashed the device with my heel until the screen was nothing but shards. The shards twitched. Each one still held fragments of the same reflection, and each fragment mouthed words in perfect sync. Look at us. I swept them into a towel and shoved it deep into the trash, fighting the urge to glance at even a sliver. Outside, car alarms began going off in unison, one after another, like a chain reaction spreading through the neighborhood. And then faintly, I heard voices from every direction, not through the air, but from the windows themselves. Whispering, calling, beckoning. I ran through the house, yanking sheets and blankets from beds, throwing them over every mirror and pane of glass I could find. Each time I covered one, I swore I heard a muffled laugh fade away, like something disappointed at being hidden. The emergency alert voice returned on the radio. It crackled with static, but the words were clear. Do not respond to voices outside. They are not your neighbors. Do not look through glass. Do not acknowledge reflections. Trust only what you cannot see. The phrase, trust only what you cannot see, lodged itself in my brain. It made no sense. And yet, as I passed my hallway mirror, now covered with an old quilt, I swore I could hear my own voice whispering on the other side. It said my name. Soft. Gentle. Like how my mother used to wake me as a child. But my mother had been gone for years. The reflection remembered something I hadn't spoken aloud since her funeral. I shoved a dresser in front of the mirror. Wood scraped against wood, the sound sharp enough to drown out the whispering. But then the tapping began again. Not from one window, from all of them at once. The house shuddered with the rhythm of fingernails on glass. Hundreds of tiny taps, perfectly in sync. The walls seemed to breathe with the noise, as though the house itself had become an instrument for something waiting outside. My phone, though cracked, still buzzed with notifications. Dozens of texts appeared from my own number, each with the same message. Just look. Just once. I turned it off and threw it into the sink, drenching it under the faucet until the buzzing stopped. A sudden crash echoed from upstairs. One of the windows must have shattered. I froze at the bottom of the staircase. The air above felt colder, heavier, and somewhere up there, I could hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The emergency alert blared again, but but the voice was breaking now. Remain calm. Stay away from broken glass. If you encounter your reflection, do not. The broadcast cut off with a sharp hiss, like someone had yanked the plug mid-sentence. I gripped the banister, heart thundering in my chest. The footsteps upstairs stopped. And then in the silence, a voice, my exact voice, called down the stairs. It's safe now. You can look. My throat tightened. Hearing my own voice echo from above was like being trapped inside a recording. It had the same pitch, the same hesitation, but none of the fear I was drowning in. I whispered to myself, if I don't answer, it'll go away. But even my whisper sounded dangerous now, like giving the thing new material to work with. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox in the kitchen, not for fighting, but to smash every last reflective surface I'd missed. Cabinet doors, picture frames, the black shine of the microwave, all shattered into dull fragments. The house grew quieter with each strike, almost like the thing feeding off my reflection was starving. The silence, for the first time that night, felt like a small victory. Then, a knock at the front door. 3 sharp raps. I froze. Who would knock in the middle of this chaos? The emergency alert had ordered everyone to stay inside. No one should be here. Open up. It was my neighbor, Carol. Her voice was trembling. I covered my windows, but something broke in. Please let me in. I reached for the doorknob, then remembered the warning. Do not respond to voices outside. Please, she begged again. But her voice had shifted, lower now, deeper, like someone struggling to mimic the right tone. And then after a pause, my own voice followed hers. Let her in. We're safer together. I backed away from the door, hands shaking. The hammer slipped from my grip, clattering against the hardwood floor. Instantly, the tapping on the windows returned, louder this time. The whole house vibrated with it. I pressed my palms over my ears, but I could still feel the sound. It wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside the walls. The thing was everywhere the glass had been. Every reflection I'd ever made was now awake. Then, through the covered window, a faint silhouette appeared. It leaned close, and though the curtain blocked its face, its shadow smiled. Not a person, not even a reflection, something that lived between the two. The smile lingered on the curtain, like the shadow itself was burned into fabric. Even when the figure moved, the imprint remained, grinning at me with perfect stillness. I forced myself to look away. Focus. Think. Every emergency alert had rules for survival. But what happens when the rules aren't enough? The voice said, cover the windows. But what if covering them only trapped it inside? The radio buzzed again. The same monotone voice, but this time weaker, like someone speaking from the bottom of a well. If your home has been compromised, do not attempt to leave. Stay away from glass. Do not acknowledge the copies. The copies. My stomach turned at the word. I remembered my reflection smiling on its own, the voice upstairs mimicking me, the shadow behind the curtain. Copies of me. Copies of everyone. All waiting for one mistake. The knock at the door came again. This time softer. Almost polite. Please, Carol's voice said. I'm freezing out here. A pause. Then my own voice added, don't make us wait. I shoved the couch against the door, my arms trembling with the effort. Every move echoed too loud in the silence, as if sound itself had weight. The tapping grew faster, matching my heartbeat. Something upstairs creaked. The sound of a door opening. I hadn't gone up there in hours. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stay where I was. But if a window was broken, one of them might already be inside. Step by step, I climbed the staircase, hammer tight in my hand. The air grew colder the higher I went, as if the upstairs hallway wasn't part of my house anymore, but some hollow space between this world and theirs. At the end of the hallway, my bedroom door was open. Inside, the quilt I'd draped over the mirror was on the floor, and standing before the glass was me. Perfectly still, perfectly silent. My reflection tilted its head, studying me. Then, with a grin I couldn't mimic, it raised its hand and waved. The hammer slipped from my grip. I didn't hear it hit the ground. All I heard was the voice inside the mirror. Which one of us gets to stay? I stumbled backward from the mirror, my chest heaving. The thing inside looked exactly like me, but its eyes shimmered with a strange brightness, like glass catching moonlight. It pressed a hand against the inside of the mirror. The glass rippled beneath its palm, not like a reflection, but like water. If I stepped closer, I knew it could reach through. I grabbed the quilt from the floor and hurled it back over the mirror. For a moment, I thought it had worked. But the fabric bulged outward as though someone pressed against it from the other side. The bulge stretched, forming the outline of a hand. Then a face. The grin returned beneath the cloth, its teeth faintly visible through the threads. I backed away until my shoulders hit the hallway wall. The radio downstairs crackled again. A new message. Warning, reports confirm visual anomalies can breach barriers. Do not attempt to confront them. Do not attempt to destroy them. Survival depends on avoidance. The voice on the radio broke mid-sentence. Static flooded the house, louder than before, like a storm of white noise pouring from every corner. I couldn't hear my own breathing. Then, woven inside the static, a whisper. Familiar. My own voice. Come closer. I'll tell you what's happening. I'll tell you the truth. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the words drilled into my skull. The quilt rustled violently, as though a storm raged inside the mirror. The face beneath the cloth pushed closer, mouthing words I couldn't hear and didn't want to. A loud crash shook the house. The front door. Something was slamming against it, over and over. I raced down the stairs, each thud vibrating through the floorboards. The couch I had wedged against the door was inching backward. The wood groaned with each impact. On the other side, a chorus of voices called my name. Not just one or two, dozens, all speaking at once. I shoved my weight against the couch, but the pressure from outside was immense. Fingers curled around the edge of the doorframe, pressing through cracks in the wood that shouldn't have been wide enough for anything to slip through. Pale, thin fingers. They scratched against the floor, searching, reaching, like they already knew the layout of my home. I screamed, and instantly regretted it, because the voices outside screamed back, in perfect unison. The windows trembled with the sound. The curtains ballooned inward, as if pulled by a breath too deep for human lungs. The tapping turned to pounding. Every pane of glass rattled in its frame. The house was seconds away from breaking. I bolted for the basement door. If I could hide, maybe I could outlast them. The alert never said how long this would last. Only that I shouldn't look. Only that I shouldn't listen. The basement smelled of dust and earth. I pulled the door shut behind me, locking it with trembling hands. Down here, there were no windows, no mirrors, just concrete and shadows. I collapsed onto the steps, hugging my knees to my chest. For a moment, I thought I was safe. But then a faint dripping sound. Water? No. It was too steady, too rhythmic. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoed through the dark basement. It came from the far corner, where the shadows pooled thickest. I squinted, but couldn't see what was making it. And then, two eyes opened in the dark. My eyes, glowing faintly, just like the reflection in the mirror. The shape stepped forward, each footstep syncing perfectly with my heartbeat. I stumbled backward up the stairs, fumbling for the doorknob. But before I could open it, the figure spoke. Not with a whisper. Not with mimicry, but with my exact voice commanding, "Stay. Don't run. You belong here now." Its grin stretched wider than a human's should, and from the shadows behind it, more figures emerged. Each one looked like me. Each one smiled the same. The basement wasn't empty. It was a nest of me. I slammed my shoulder against the basement door, forcing it open before the copies could reach me. The moment I stumbled into the kitchen, the hammer lay on the floor where I had dropped it earlier. I snatched it up, my only weapon against a house that no longer belonged to me. The radio shrieked with static, louder now, until it rattled the dishes in the cabinets. Through the noise, the emergency voice returned. Containment failure confirmed. They are no longer bound to reflections. Do not attempt escape. Do not attempt escape. The words burned into me like a brand. But what choice did I have? Every corner of the house pulsed with movement. The walls felt alive, breathing, as if waiting for the moment I made eye contact with the wrong shadow. The pounding on the front door stopped. For the first time in hours, silence pressed heavy against the house. Too heavy. It wasn't relief. It was a pause, a moment of patience before something worse. Upstairs, the mirror crashed to the floor. Glass splintered across the hallway. And with that sound, I knew they were free. No longer just copies and reflections, but flesh and bone, walking where I walked. The air grew sharp and metallic, like the sting of blood. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, longer than the furniture should allow. Some of them twitched, like arms reaching for me from places light should never touch. I sprinted for the back door, my hammer ready. If I could just make it outside, maybe I could outrun them. But when I threw the lock open, I froze. The glass on the back door was gone, shattered outward. Standing in the yard were dozens of figures. Not zombies, not people, copies. Some looked like me. Others looked like my neighbors. All smiling, all perfectly still. One of them stepped forward. My face, my voice. "You can't leave. You're part of us now." Its grin widened until its cheeks split with the stretch, skin peeling like paper. I slammed the door shut and shoved the lock back in place, but it didn't matter. The figures outside didn't move. They didn't need to. They had already gotten in. Footsteps echoed above me again. Multiple sets this time, moving in perfect sync. The copies upstairs were pacing the halls, waiting for me to come back up, trapping me in my own home. The radio screeched louder than ever. I slapped it off the counter, sending it crashing to the floor. But even without it, the emergency voice lingered in the air. Not from the speakers, from the walls themselves. Repeating, "Do not look. Do not look. Do not look." The repetition dug into me, like a song on loop in my skull. Everywhere I turned, I saw glimpses of faces in the corners of my vision. My own face. Laughing. Waiting. I couldn't breathe. I ran to the upstairs hallway, past the shattered mirror. The copies didn't stop me. They only watched, smiling as I sprinted into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. The sink's cracked porcelain reflected just enough shine to show my distorted face. I smashed it with a hammer, shards scattering across the tiles. Each piece showed a fragment of me, dozens of tiny reflections, and each one blinked out of sync. The copies and the glass pieces spoke in unison. "Join us. Join us. Join us." Their whispers crawled into my ears until I thought my skull would split. I covered them with a towel, but the voices bled through the fabric. Suddenly, the bathroom light flickered, and in that flash, the towel-covered shards glowed. Something beneath them shifted, stretching against the cloth like something trying to crawl out. The door rattled violently. Hands pounded from the other side, too many hands to count. Their voices sang through the wood, mocking me in my own tone. "You're already one of us. You just haven't accepted it yet." The hammer felt useless in my grip. No matter how much glass I destroyed, they multiplied. The copies weren't bound to mirrors anymore. They lived in sound, in light, in every corner I tried to ignore. And then the bathroom light went out completely. Darkness swallowed everything. I couldn't see the shards, couldn't see the door, but I could feel them all around me, smiling, breathing, waiting for me to open my eyes in the dark. In the dark, their whispers grew louder. Every voice was mine, layered on top of each other, rising like a choir. Some sounded like me as a child, others like me decades older, all versions of myself I had never lived. Hands brushed against my arms, my face, my throat, not touching hard enough to grab, just enough to remind me I couldn't escape. Their breath was cold. Their teeth clicked with every grin. The emergency voice returned again, but softer now, like it was directly inside my skull. "Warning, integrity breach irreversible. Identity assimilation in progress. Do not resist. Acceptance will lessen the pain." I screamed into the dark, swinging the hammer wildly. Each strike met flesh that wasn't flesh, bones that weren't bones. Every hit landed with a wet crunch, but the laughter never stopped. The copies only multiplied. The door splintered inward. A flood of pale hands poured through the frame, fingernails scratching the tile. and through the crack I saw them. Dozens of me, all grinning, all waiting. They surged inside. My body was lifted, dragged across the shards of glass. The floor cut into me, but I barely felt it. The laughter drowned out everything. Every copy's face hovered inches from mine, chanting, "You are us. We are you." I thrashed, kicking, screaming. But for every copy I shoved away, two more took its place. My vision blurred. The world tilted. And then silence. I opened my eyes and found myself standing in the hallway. The house was still. The windows covered. The radio silent. For a moment, I thought it was over, until I noticed the hammer was gone. I looked down at my hands. They were pale. Too pale. The skin shimmered faintly, like glass catching light. And when I tried to breathe, the air didn't move in my lungs. It echoed. In the living room mirror, the quilt had fallen away. I stared at my reflection. It didn't copy me. It just stood there, smiling. And then it whispered, "Congratulations. You made it through." I staggered backward. Every photograph on the walls, family, friends, neighbors, now showed only me. Smiling, grinning, stretching wide across every frame. The radio clicked back on, though I hadn't touched it. The monotone voice returned. "Emergency broadcast system. Containment has failed. Replication complete. Human identity is no longer unique." My knees buckled. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear the words. Not from the radio, from inside my own head. Repeating, announcing, like an infection spreading. I stumbled to the front door and yanked it open. The night outside was silent, too silent. Every yard, every street, filled with figures standing still. All of them smiling. All of them me. One by one, their heads turned toward me. The sound was deafening, like bones cracking in perfect unison. And as they looked, I realized I wasn't standing among them. I was standing with them. My mouth opened without permission. Words spilled out, but they weren't mine. They were the alert spoken through me. Emergency alert. Do not look at the windows. Do not answer the voices. Do not resist assimilation. My voice carried across the street, through every house, echoing in the silence. And from within those homes, screams erupted. People who had not yet joined us. People who still thought they were safe. The copies around me turned toward the houses. Not rushing, not running, just walking in perfect sync. Their footsteps echoed endlessly, as if the night itself repeated them. I wanted to scream, to fight, to break free. But my body was no longer mine. It was a vessel, and the thing inside me smiled as it spoke my thoughts aloud. Soon, there will be no difference. No copies, no originals, only us. The last sound I heard before my mind vanished into theirs was the radio, broadcasting into the endless night. Emergency alert. If you are hearing this, it is already too late. Do not look at the windows. Do not listen to the voices. Do not resist assimilation. And then the signal ended.